Welcome to Foxhole Symphony, a podcast about the transformational value of men in authentic community.
In our Foxhole, men are equipped to build relationships that foster belonging, accountability, and growth.
Stop believing the lie that you can thrive in isolation and instead
join us on the journey from broken to whole.
Hey everybody, my name is Chris and I get the privilege to welcome you back to the Foxhole Symphony podcast, where we pursue belonging, accountability, and growth through authentic relationships. No masks, no agendas, just iron sharpening iron. This is a very special episode for me today. A friend of mine that I have known for almost 20 years. For her, that was back when she was in her late teens, early 20s, and me, not so much. I remember a strong young woman from Jersey that was fighting to make her mark in life and sang on the praise and worship team at church like an angel with a Motown halo. Let's listen into the very first Foxhole episode, Grace by a Woman's Perspective. Here we go.
Welcome back to Foxhole Symphony Podcast. I'm Sarge, your co-host here with my good buddy Mark.
Hey, I'm Mark.
Good to have you, man.
You too, bro.
Or you have me.
I do.
Really?
Yeah.
Because we're at your place. So thanks for having me.
But the Foxhole is everybody's
but
place.
I don't mind welcoming you to your own home.
To my house and my office.
So welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome. And thanks for the tea.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it really warms me up.
I won't tell anyone you're drinking peppermint tea, but it's okay.
Hey, we've been talking about this type of episode for some time now.
Yes.
Right? Like, Hey, what does it look like? I mean, we have this foxhole and we have a bunch of men that show up in the foxhole.
Caves.
And, we talk obviously about men in authentic community. It's all over the website. That's what the podcast's about.
Yeah.
And we've had some women, in our lives and say, hey, like I listen and, it'd be interesting if you had a female perspective, and we're like, yes, it would.
Who might that be?
That would be great. And then, Chris, the maestro, who is such an important part of the Foxhole Symphony podcast, our sound engineer and producer, says, hey, I know somebody. And so that person is our guest this morning. And so we're really excited. This is new. This is new for us. And we're excited to see where it goes. But why don't you introduce our guest for today?
Sure, folks. Listen, this is great. We have been waiting for this. And Veronica, we're really glad to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Veronica Colon. Say hello.
Hi.
Welcome into the Foxhole. Let me do a quick introduction and then you can take it from there, and anything you'd like to add is fine.
Okay.
This is Veronica Colon, who is a mom. She's a psychiatrist, a certified life coach. She's an author of a new book, Half Baked Love, and also a really good friend of our brother, Chris Saklasky, which puts her at a high mark coming in the door.
Big
right?
time.
Right. So Veronica, you have street cred coming right in.
Awesome.
Yes, it's a great start. I'd love for our listeners to know a little bit more about you. So what if maybe you could do this? What's a day in the life of Veronica Colon like? Help folks understand what you do and how you do it.
I am a single mom, but I actually just got engaged 2 weeks ago. So,
Oh, wow.
Congratulations.
That's
thank
awesome.
you. Thank you. Yeah. So getting remarried. A day in my life is dropping my daughter off at school. I do work for a financial wealth management company. So I do that as my full-time job. And then I'm kicking off my life coaching again. I picked it back up. I put it down for several years because mom life is not for the weak. Takes a lot of time and effort.
Sure.
But now that my daughter's back in school, I have a little bit more time to myself, thankfully. So I coach clients. Currently, I am doing divorce recovery coaching and like breakup, heartbreaks. I also help women who struggle with high functioning anxiety, which is something that I've struggled with for a number of years. And so I help other women manage that, get through that, and just put some better systems in place so it's not an overwhelming part of their lives anymore. Just a small correction. I am not a psychiatrist. I am a psychologist.
Oh, I'm
which
sorry.
is a little bit different. I'm not a doctor. But I do have a degree in psychology, and I studied counseling, family counseling, marriage counseling, and then, of course, the life coaching aspect of it as well. So my day is super busy. I'm up at 5:30 in the morning, and I really don't get to bed probably till like 11 o'clock at night. So my day is pretty much nonstop every single day. So
that's a lot.
Super fun though.
That's a lot to juggle. That is a lot to juggle.
Really?
Well, I want to jump in. I mean, again, who knows where this will go, but so excited to have you as our first female guest in the Foxhole. And so, being so, I'd love to get your perspective on, women in authentic community, because, I'm honestly not sure whether or not it's any different than men, and I'm sure there are some different aspects, but I'm sure there's a lot of, similarities. People are people, right? I mean, we share the same heart in many respects. And so, Mark and I talk a lot about what keeps men from authentic community. Men tend to go to great lengths to avoid being known for who they really are. And so, and really that's like probably two main ways that I can think of. I mean, they either isolate or they pretend to be something they're not or someone they're not, right? So they either what we call cave up and isolate, or they hide behind masks. And they do that because those masks get them something. They somehow, the masks we wear somehow meet this innate need. Right. It's, the need to be accepted or to belong, the need to be loved, the need to be affirmed, the need to be seen as strong is a big one for men. Right. Like I'll be viewed as weak if XYZ. Right. So maybe this is a silly question, Veronica, but is this any different for women?
I don't think so. I think for men, obviously, that need to be strong is definitely higher up, in a priority for men than it is for women. I feel like for women, the reason we don't get to experience authentic community as much is because of competition. And when I say competition, it's, not a real competition, obviously. It's more like the competition of beauty, of status, of, your social media. Social media is huge now in the lives of women. And like, we're competing against, the Kardashians of the world. Not really, but you know what I mean? Like, think about famous people like that. And trying to live up to this look or this image that really is not possible unless you have millions of dollars and you want to just lay on a table and get surgery all the time.
Yep.
So I feel like from my personal experience, it's been kind of like that competition of women, of like having so many insecurities and not being able to recognize their own insecurities and then projecting it onto another person as if they're being mean to you or they don't like you or they're jealous of you. But I feel like fundamentally all of it stems more from insecurity than anything else with women.
Yeah, that is interesting and makes all the sense in the world. Go ahead.
Well, I was just, when Veronica said insecurity is a key.
Yep.
I believe in men sense insecurity and get angry. One of the quick reactions is anger. What is it in women? And by the way, Veronica, we know you're not speaking for all women, but we talk on, Sarge and I speak from our experience. Yeah. So when I say,
we love to make overgeneralizations and oversimplifications because we have a podcast and we can. Nobody's challenging us. No, kidding. But
so what if we were looking at an equation, insecurity equals what in a woman? What's the natural reaction that you've experienced?
Jealousy.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. So, obviously in an age where, everything is so social media driven, that obviously has become, just a more and more significant aspect of life. Right. And, I guess following up on that, so that those insecurities, that jealousy, what is that? I guess, what does it look like? Well, two things come to mind. Initially, and this is, again, maybe an oversimplification, but what's at the root of that? What's at the root of that, those insecurities? And then also, what do you see women doing, as a result? Not so much like trying to keep up, that's sort of obvious, but like, what do you see them doing to maybe most avoid authentic community or to be known for who they really are? Not so much hiding behind social media, but in relationship. So what's at the root and sort of how does it play out?
I think at the root of the insecurity and the jealousy is just feeling not enough. I think there's a lot of women, whether we realize it or not, we have a lot of unresolved trauma. We have a lot of unresolved issues that have stemmed from our childhood that, big or small, they can be the full spectrum, but trauma is not an event. Trauma is how you interpret the event. And so, the way people have interpreted their lives and how it's played out really, especially now, I feel like we kind of have like this orphan society where everybody feels like they're not enough and like they're abandoned and like they're all alone. And you see that kind of just perpetuating itself with social media. We live in a day and age where, ironically, we have social media and people are the most alone they've ever been.
Yeah, right.
Everybody's the most lonely that they've ever been in their lives. And so I think at the root of it is just feeling like we're not enough, right? Because we're looking at a worldly standard, if we can say that, a worldly standard of what it means to be enough, or, what it means to be a woman, or what it means to be, attractive, or whatever it is. And I feel like if you put everything up against the world standard, we're always going to feel like we're not enough. Yeah. But if you put it up against the biblical standard of who God created you to be, who you already are, without you even trying, who you already are, because you are a daughter or a son of God, it changes that for somebody. And because a lot of people don't have that experience yet, they keep walking around like they're not enough. Yeah. And they're insecure and they're jealous. And very similar to men, women can also put on this mask and act like, oh my God, there's a saying that says, insecurities are really loud. So if you go to a party and you see, women and they're really loud, they're very boisterous, they're cracking up, they're just everybody's paying attention to them. It's really actually insecurity. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's very interesting. And you pay attention when you go to a Christmas party, because we got a lot of holiday parties coming up. Who's the loudest in the room and who's the quietest? Mm-hmm. The most confident woman in the room is going to be the one that's having quieter conversations and just working the room, but quietly, Sure. An insecure person is let me be loud because I'm going to draw the attention that I want, which is, okay, you're going to look at me, you're going to pay attention to me, but that's it. That's all you get. Mm-hmm. So there's no real time for them to be vulnerable and have a one-on-one conversation with somebody because they're so loud.
Boy, am I glad you're on this podcast to say things like that. Because if you or I, Mark, say things like that on this podcast, we're gonna have a problem, right?
True.
True. Not some things we can say. That's for sure.
Well, you made some great points. You talked about earlier, prior to talking about the jealousy and insecurity, you were talking about self-image. And I personally think that has a lot to do with those insecurities. What we see in the mirror isn't what we project. And it's also not how God sees us. You know how strongly I feel about this. And what an awakening I've had is that God doesn't see me how I see me.
Yeah.
Right. And turning that switch on and off isn't easy. It's more of a dial. I adjust it on the course of the day and how things are going. But it's interesting to note that it's similar for men.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, at its root, as Veronica's saying, I mean, it comes down to identity, right? Like who we are, how we see ourselves versus, how God sees us. Mark and I just came off of a men's weekend last weekend. And boy, how frequently did that come up? And these are, these are men who are professed followers of Jesus and, still, again, struggling to see themselves, the way that God sees them. And so, that's a journey.
Right.
That's a journey.
Well, I don't want to catch Veronica off guard because she's not familiar with Mark Men for Christ. But in there, Veronica, the weekend Sarge is talking about the 2 days that you spend together are dealing with woundedness. Right. You actually inferred that with women as well. And the wounds we work on there are fear, deceit, anger, shame, and sadness. Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So, and as a psychologist, got that right this time, that you're obviously used to dealing with that as well, right? These are some of the baggage that we carry around, men carry around, that we're trying to help them unload on that weekend, right? Do you, and again, without putting you on the spot, taking your experience as a life coach and your training as a psychologist and understanding the depth of those wounds and how it can impact our self-image and identity, what ways do you know that you've recommended to people or see women working on that so that they can free themselves from that past experience that wounded them, that they're just carrying with them? They carry it to their jobs, they carry it to their church, they carry it to their neighborhood, they carry it to their Christmas party, and the things you've mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the biggest things that I work with and that I say over and over and over again to people is that in acceptance lies peace. And accepting the things, because they are most likely always childhood traumas that cause these bigger feelings to kind of escalate as we grow older. And we don't want to address the childhood trauma. We want to talk about being 25 or 35 or 37 or 40 or however old you are. You want to talk about where you are right now. But where you are right now is cumulative up to where you've been.
Sure.
And so we have to go back. We have to go back and be like, okay, let's get back to the root. And so I play this, I call it the why game, and I call it 7 whys deep. And I'm like, okay, example, just hypothetical question. It's like, okay, I'm feeling shame today because of this. And the person answers the question. Okay, why? And they'll answer it again. Same question, but why again? And you do that 7 times. And eventually you actually get to the root of why you actually feel like that, because it's never the event that you're currently experiencing. It's something in your childhood or something that happened to you that made you feel that way, that when you see it presented in a similar way, you go right back into the shame, right back into the anger, right back into the depression. And so I really work with my clients in getting down to like, when did this start? Let's talk about that. And then let's heal that part of you. Let's accept that happened, and let's change the story you're telling yourself. Because like I said, trauma is not the event. It's how you experience, how you interpret that event. What did you make that trauma mean to you? And that's why it's traumatic. Because
Absolutely.
You and I can go through the same exact thing, and it could be a trauma for me, and it could be nothing to you.
Sure.
And so it's like, we have to get back to like, why? Why did this happen? Not necessarily why did it happen, but why did you make it mean X, Y, and Z? And let's accept the fact that, okay, you can never change what already happened, right? But we can move forward. We can definitely move forward. And we can definitely, invite the Holy Spirit and God to highlight the areas in us that need healing. Like I saw this on Instagram, and I love it. I'm obsessed with this phrase that triggers are an invitation to healing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So most people,
Yeah.
When people get triggered, they're thinking they're failing again.
Yeah. It's a gift. It's a gift. What a gift.
It's like, no, it's like, it's an invitation to go deeper. Healing is like an onion. Like there's so many layers to it until you get down to like the core of it. And it's just more like, recognizing that you have to be self-aware, right? You need to get that self-awareness, which can't be taught. I can't teach people how to be self-aware. I can teach you what to look for,
Yep.
Well, we talk about
teach you how to be self-aware.
Yeah, we talk about reframing here all the time, and that's what I hear you saying. So
yeah.
How am I looking at this and change my perspective?
Yeah.
Change the story you're telling yourself. That's what I tell people. Change the story.
Yeah.
Because most people make themselves the victim in every story. But you got to realize you're the villain in somebody's story.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. By the way,
That's
I
a
just
good
want to say out loud that by the fifth why question, I'd want to choke you. That's
No,
all.
but 7 whys. I mean, this is, we use this in business too, right?
Yeah,
The
sure.
seven whys. I mean, it's a great tool to help people get just a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper, get down to the root, right? And now Mark and I, we've peeled the onion back so much, Veronica, that, we're down to, we've got like these two little nubs.
Green things.
Yeah. And we're trying to figure out now, we need like a razor blade to kind of like shave, and nobody wants that part of the onion. It's really, there's very little use for that other than to just plant it and maybe start over. We're
that's good.
we're down to the nub, but we somehow keep finding stuff.
We do. And thank you for the metaphor. We are professional onion peelers here.
I love it.
It is one of the things that pebble in the pond and peeling the onion are our go-tos.
Yeah. Well, I love, Veronica says, do the work needed to heal. You have to do the work needed to heal. And we talk about that a lot, right? What is that work? And she just explained it, right? The work is, it's the emotional work. It's the, the willingness to peel the onion, to go layer by layer, to answer those why questions and then to apply it, right? To apply it, to do the work of reframing, to practice and exercise that muscle. I mean, I think therein lies the work. Is that, are we on track, Veronica?
100%. Yeah, that's 100% right.
Beautiful.
And the thing, people quit. That's the problem.
Yeah.
People quit. And they think because they got triggered that they're not good enough. Again, always back down to the I'm not good enough.
The message.
Like
the lie.
they get triggered and they
a lie.
feel like, it is a lie. It's a very deep rooted demonic lie that is like everybody kind of struggles with at one point or another, and then to varying degrees. And just getting down to that root all the time.
Yeah.
Figure it out. And wanting to know what it is too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the desire to know, the willingness to face it, right? I mean, there was another quote that I saw, I think it may have been on your Instagram, but it was about, sort of rushing away, sort of getting, I think it was coming to an ending, like getting to an ending just to get out of the feeling.
Yeah.
And that's, the avoidance, right? The avoidance factor is like, well, that feels icky. I don't want to feel that. So I'll just take the other alternative. What's the alternative? I'll take that. Right.
Yeah.
And that's not where the work is, right? That's not where the healing is. That's not where the victory is. That's just avoidance.
Yeah. And it's dangerous because from my personal experience, like I experienced a lot of trauma in my 20s and I was avoidant. So we're two things. Everybody's two things. Your brain works one of two ways. You're either pleasure seeking or you're pain avoidance. And so the people and everybody's in pain, right? Everybody has some pain or has experienced some pain. And the people who move into like addictions are pleasure seeking, pain avoidance, like together, kind of like a combo.
I was going to say, I'm both for sure. There's no doubt about it.
No, yeah. We're everybody's both in a different situation. So it depends what you're facing. Me, I used to be like a fighter, I'm like, oh no, I'm going to get in the trenches. I'm going to do it. And then, life wore me down enough where I'm like, I used to be like, I'm like, no, I'm not doing nothing now.
Right.
I'm like, I'm running. I'm avoidance all the way. Yep. And it's cost me, like, honestly, it cost me a lot. And, now that I've gotten a little older again and a little bit more seasoned, I'm like, you know what? Like the pain of recovery is worth everything.
Yeah.
And I mean that wholeheartedly, because when you don't go through that pain of recovery, you're just prolonging the injury. That's all you're doing.
Sure.
You're dragging it out for your whole life for no reason. Like take the 6 months, you know what I mean? Take the 6 months to a year and really dig into the pain that you have and work on it. Get a therapist, get a counselor, join some kind of support group, whatever it is. But do the work. I mean, 6 months of hard work, and it's the same in business. 6 months of like focused hard work will get you so much farther than you half half-assing it,
Yeah.
half-assing it for,
Sure.
like a year or 5 years, So it's like, just do it. I know it hurts. We all know it hurts, but I say this to my friends, to my women friends all the time when they're struggling. And even some of the girls that I counsel, I was like, do you have a weekend by yourself? And they're like, yeah, I have a weekend. I was like, do me a favor, put some worship music on. I was like, pray, get on the floor, and don't come up until you feel better.
Yeah. So let me, can we camp there for a sec? Because I mean, this is all great, I'll just call it advice. I mean, they're just words of wisdom for women, and our women listeners. Probably won't come as a shock that most of our listeners are men. So let's talk to them for a second. So going along the lines of what you were just talking about, and, women who are maybe avoiding that work, or maybe in the midst of going through that work, but they're feeling not enough, due to unresolved trauma or, abandonment or whatever it may be. What's the role, for those husbands out there? What's the role of a husband in that, if any? Right? Is it the, the encourager? Is it stand on the sidelines? Is it, again, I imagine a lot of men going, I don't know what to do with that. What's the right approach here? Right? Like, is that, so what are your thoughts on that? And of course, having been through your own journey.
Yeah. Honestly, one thing, be a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
And this cannot be understated, because most guys are fixers. Guys are fixers in general. You see your woman hurting, your wife, whatever, and you're like, I want to fix it. I want to fix it. I want to fix it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have the kind of personality, and most women do too. And other times it's not your job, but you can't fix it. You can't heal her heart. But what you can do is keep her heart safe. You can keep her safe. You can be a safe place for her. You can let her, unload her emotions on you, and let her be vulnerable without feeling like you're going to judge her or throw it in her face. And this works both ways. Like relationships, especially, husband and wife, you both need to be safe for each other.
Yeah. Amen.
Because if we can't be vulnerable, if I can't be vulnerable with my husband, and he can't be vulnerable with me, that opens a door for the enemy to let you be vulnerable with somebody else that's not your spouse. And I'm not talking about your best friend or a pastor or something like that. I'm talking about okay, I'm going to go be vulnerable with my coworker who's a female, or, my coworker who's a male. And so these are the little things that I think a lot of people have a hard time building, is safety in relationships.
Sure.
Absolutely. My goodness. I mean, what a good word. What a nugget right there. And it starts at home. It starts at home. And, for those that are in marriage relationships, that is our responsibility for each other, right? Husband and wife. And, if we can't be in a safe, supportive, authentic relationship there, we're probably not going to be able to do it elsewhere.
Yep.
And, that I see that play out a lot, Veronica, in a number of relationships where, I'm glad you said it goes both ways, because I have seen that. I've seen it, both ways, where, there's this message, well, why can't you be more vulnerable? And then the other person shares some, emotion or some trauma or just a message in a vulnerable, transparent way, and then they're pounded over the head. And
that's why I'm not vulnerable.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, wait a second, right? Yeah. Like, whoa, why? There's this power struggle at times that gets in the way, or self-protection.
Yep.
Right? Self-protection. So even if it's not my vulnerability, but it's yours, and suddenly that makes me feel uncomfortable, so I'm going to shut it down because now I feel my vulnerability bubbling up, and I don't want to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, like talk about work.
Yeah. Do I have to reciprocate in the vulnerable? Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I mean, but at the same time, like creating that safe space for both, like it's up to me as a husband to be that safe space, create that safe space for my wife, and vice versa. Like that I'm so glad you said that, because again, the man and the fixer, the husband, might be going, well, I need to do that for my wife. I don't need my wife to do that for me.
Right.
Yes, you do.
How could she do that?
Yes,
for
you
me?
do.
Yeah. This ties in so nicely, Veronica, to something that's a foundational concept, the safety concept at Marked Men, and some of the men's ministries we're at. We have another men's group that meets here in my house called Band of Brothers. And the first thing we talk about is like, what is Band of Brothers? Well, it's a safe place. And so this not only is a one-on-one, what husbands and wives or significant others can do for each other, it ripples to, our families. It ripples to our communities, to our churches, to our relationship with God. Mm-hmm. Right. And that safety is paramount, and you have to live it out. Right, saying you're safe, or really making someone feel safe. I'm gonna, with Maria, my spouse.
Yeah,
there's real work there.
There is. It's interesting. It's occurring to me, and it makes me a little bit sad. I had said it starts at home, and yet, over the last 15 years that we've been doing this, I don't know about you, but I'm just thinking back, and that's typically not the case. It typically is not starting at home. It's starting in the foxhole. It's starting, on the men's weekend. And then it's, we're working towards getting it home, which is really tragic. I mean, it really is tragic. And, again, I'm willing to do that till I'm in the grave. But, I just wonder what it looks like, for it to start at home. Like, why is that, men, and I don't know if this may be true for women as well. Again, just feeling more safe or dipping their toe in that water of safe and authentic with someone who's not their spouse, who's not at home, before practicing that at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Honestly,
an episode.
Yeah. I can tell you my thoughts on that.
Please.
I believe this to my core. It's that a couple of things, right? But the main one is, if I'm vulnerable with you, I can't control how you see me. And men, like you said, want to be seen as strong. They are the protectors. They are the fixers. And if I tell my wife, well, I'm not married, right? But if I'm a guy,
yep.
and I tell my wife something that's, super traumatic and very, very vulnerable, very emotional, a wife has one or two responses, okay? One, she's super supportive and she's actually your safe place. Mm-hmm. Or two, which is more common nowadays because people are not working on themselves, is that your wife doesn't want to see you vulnerable. She then sees you as weak.
Yep.
Which causes a lack of respect, which of course guys receive love as respect, women receive love as love.
Yeah.
And it just causes this whole breakdown. And I honestly also feel like that's also something that's very demonic.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, well, you can't have this intimate relationship with a person if you can't be vulnerable. But now I can't be vulnerable because then my wife sees me as weak.
Yeah.
So you see the breakdown there?
I do.
So,
yeah.
Guys, that's why I think sometimes, when you go to a men's retreat or something like that, it's easier because, number one, everybody's doing it together now, right? So now you're supported in a community setting.
Sure.
And then your wife doesn't know about it.
Right. Yeah.
You don't have to go home and boo-hoo to your wife about like, oh, well, this is what Jesus healed in my heart, or do whatever. And like, it's so interesting. It fascinates me, honestly, because this is actually the breakdown in relationships, is that men don't feel like they can be vulnerable because of the response. But do you guys know who Brene Brown is?
Oh, of course. Love Brene.
Okay, love her. Well, she talks about the whole concept of vulnerability.
Yep.
And it's like, you're sharing something knowing that you can't control the outcome. And for some people, that is debilitating.
Yeah.
Like, I can't control how my wife is going to see me if I tell her this.
Sure.
Or, or vice versa. And so it does become very challenging. But I think that's where it kind of falls off right there, is that like,
yeah. So
expectations.
Expectations. And listen, it is a very real risk. I mean, there's a real risk involved, right? And because, You don't know. You don't know how it's going to be received, which is why in a safe, confidential container that doesn't directly impact my marriage, the risk is lower, right? And so the risk, the risk of not sharing it outweighs the risk of sharing it in that environment. Whereas at home, it might be the other way around because I don't know what the impact will be.
Absolutely.
And so, but we do often see as men start to experience the freedom and the healing that comes from confession, right?
In the safe environment.
Right. Begin to take incremental steps toward vulnerability in other relationships and transparency and honesty with themselves and with others. And so I guess that is, we answered the question. There it is. Why is that? Well, there you go. Thanks for that insight, Veronica. Yeah. Wow. There's a lot there.
I was going to say, when you asked it, that's the first thing that went through my mind. Even though we know the men who show up to our meetings and the things that we lead, they don't. You don't feel safe because someone says you're safe. Yeah. You feel safe because you experience safety.
Yeah. Right? Yes. Right. However, listen, I want to caution men for a moment. We've got to be very careful about, where we're finding that safety. Because, Veronica mentioned something, right? Like someone else at work, another female. If you're a married man finding safety in a female friend that you can't find with your wife, that danger.
Will Robinson, yeah.
Stop now. Because that's a dangerous road.
Absolutely.
That's a dangerous road.
When Veronica was talking about, you asked what the husband's role is or what a man can do, and she said, provide a safe place. It made me think of our friend John Eldridge, and you may know the author, but he's a men's author. And he talks about men having 3 purposes in life, and that's a battle to win, a mountain to climb, and a princess to rescue, right? So that's the fixer part that you were referring to, Veronica, right? Where you start talking, a woman starts talking to us, or my wife is talking to me. I'm thinking like, how am I going to fix it? How am I going to look good in her eyes?
Right.
How am I going to fix it and look like,
Which really isn't selfish at all. It's not. It's just very, innate. It's not selfish.
It's not about me at all. Yeah.
Veronica, we have, our regular listeners know this. We have a giant roll of duct tape and a hammer on our studio table here, and it's to remind us that we're not here to fix anyone. We need the reminder. Mark actually carries the duct tape and hammer around with him wherever he goes to remind him that he doesn't need to fix, he's got them all over his house. They're
one in each room.
So funny.
But that just has made me such a good fixer.
But it's true. It's true. That is the first instinct. And it is from a place of caring. It is a caring heart. It's a tender-hearted, desire not to see somebody not in pain. Yeah. And yet in the pain is where the work is, right? And so allowing people, even as men, we're rescuers, so even in a tight, safe container, we're with men, and a man starts to cry. Tears start to come out of his eyes. What's the first thing we want to do? I don't know about you. The first thing I want to do is give him a hug. Yeah. And what does it do? It shuts the man down immediately. Yep. Right. Takes him right out of that feeling. Comforts him rather than letting him feel that. And that is so hard to do. Mm-hmm. But it's exactly what needs to be done.
For me, it's because I want to check the box. I want to get that done to move on to the next thing I have to fix, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And Veronica will understand the lingo. It's just like, I know people say sometimes it's good to have Mark around. He'll land the plane. He'll get it done.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then other times it's the last thing you need to do. You need to be just hovering and don't land the plane. Stop.
Yeah.
Don't finish. So,
if I want to touch on, so Veronica, I'm a dad of a daughter. Mark's got 2 sons. I have a son and a daughter, but I'm thinking about my daughter who's 20, and I'm of course picturing her at 5, and thinking about our listeners, who are dads of daughters, and the question is what, I guess for the dads of daughters listening, what are some of the important ways? And I imagine it's much of the same, right? Creating a safe space. But what are some of the ways that dads can, influence, prepare their young daughters to embrace authentic relationships, to, not fall into the trap of competition and loneliness, and there's obvious answers like, well, let's be careful not to wound them, but short of that, what would you say to dads of daughters? What are some ways that we can get ahead of that, and just pour into and invest in them?
Yeah, this was a good one. Honestly, I think it boils down to a couple of things. Number one is consistency. Being consistently available to them, and not just for like every little thing. I mean, emotionally available to them.
Yeah.
Be consistently emotionally available to your daughter. And also, the safe thing can't be understated, but to make her feel like she's always enough. Because I feel like my parents got divorced when I was at a really young age. And then I also have friends that their parents are still married. And a lot of times the people whose parents are still married, the daughters actually have the bigger daddy issues. And the reason for that is that the dad was not emotionally available. Everything fell on the mom, even though they were together. The dad wasn't available to pick up the boob, help them with the boo-boos, or, first heartbreak, they go to their mom because their mom feels safer. Yeah. And that shouldn't always be the case. It should be both parents feel safe to that child. And from my personal experience, I honestly just wish my dad was more emotionally available.
Interesting.
That I could feel like he was safe to have a conversation with him.
What do you that is a great word. You just took me back very quickly reviewing the last 20 years of my life. What does that look like? What does that look like where the rubber meets the road for a dad to be emotionally available for his daughter, whether that's less so, I think, at the, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, right? The boo-boos are one thing, but to be emotionally available for, let's say, a girl in her early teens, what is that? What do you mean by that? What's that look like?
Yeah. I mean, we're being emotionally aware enough to understand that, hormones, body's going through changes, her not feeling pretty, her not feeling smart enough, or whatever it is, and just being there with the words of affirmation, being able to see your daughter for where she is, not like as a child, not like, you're a pain in the butt teenager who has a bad attitude, but really being able to cut through all of that and see your child as a person, a real person, and being able to speak to whatever that struggle is inside.
Yeah.
That's the emotional availability. And again, that also takes a lot of vulnerability for the dad, because dads sometimes are uncomfortable with the girl stuff like that, from at least what I've seen, and I just think that would change so much.
Yeah,
for women and girls.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the discomfort. I'm putting myself back in a place, with my daughter in her early teens, where just again hormones, and emotional roller coaster. And I remember, her sitting at the kitchen table, and I'm sitting at the kitchen table, and I'm on this roller coaster, and I was confused as a man and as a dad. I was confused because I didn't know what was happening. And I truly, there was a lack of understanding. And I remember turning to my wife after my daughter stormed out of the room, and I looked at my wife and I said, did I do something? Because I don't think I said anything. And I just looked at my wife and I said, I need your help, because don't know what's happening and I don't know what to do with this.
This is a foreign language.
This is foreign to me. So like there's a gap in understanding. And I remember my wife, this may sound so ridiculous, but it's so helpful to me. I remember my wife explaining to me what my daughter was going through and just saying, oh no, like, because to my daughter, like I was twisted up. This is my baby girl. She's all, what's happening? And my wife was totally unfazed by it, as if it was expected. Right. And so which is why I looked at my wife with like the hands up emoji, like this, like, like, what do I do? What do I do with here? I need help. And she was like, oh, you don't have to do anything, like this is just, happening. And we had a podcast recently episode that was just love them. And we said, just love. And it was like, just love her. Yeah. Just love her.
Love her. Let her know that.
And let her know that. Yes. Yes.
It's so interesting to hear Veronica choose those words, because I read something about this, because I know this isn't my brain, but what I read about being emotionally available is that being emotionally available is not the sum of being emotional and available.
Right.
You could be available for your daughter.
Sure.
I took you to the games. I took you to school. I helped you with your homework. That's one thing.
Yeah.
You could be emotional with your daughter.
Yeah.
Right? Sees daddy cry, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
Those things don't add up to being emotionally available.
Interesting. Right.
Yeah. And that's a whole different
no, but that's good, because I would have guessed that, modeling emotions, feeling my emotions and expressing my emotions in a healthy way would equate to emotional availability. But you're suggesting that's not necessarily the case.
I am the writer of what I'm recalling talked just a lot about empathy. Right?
Okay.
It is empathy. That's 100% correct. It's
in
empathy.
Emotional availability, and men, it said, aren't necessarily too adept at empathy, right? Well, get twitchy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, going back to
sympathy, we're great.
Yeah.
Oh,
empathy.
They lost.
Yeah. Well, because it requires me to actually feel something. Right. Which, going back to the beginning of what Veronica was saying, and her response to the question is, just like feeling it, allowing yourself to feel, and boy, let's just start there. An awareness, I think she mentioned, right? An awareness,
self-awareness
of the emotion, what they're feeling, what I'm feeling, and being okay with that. And so, that's a great.
Can I just say something?
No, I'm sorry. The episode's over.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. Jump in.
Just Sarge talking today.
Yeah, exactly. Go, please share.
So I just thought about something that might be helpful, because I think empathy is hard, especially if you're dealing with a teenage daughter, and the hormones and all the things. But if I were a dad, this is probably the question I would ask myself. What is my daughter going through? And if I were her, how would I want my dad to show up for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I do this with my 5-year-old, because she's struggling with our divorce. We're both in therapy, and she's really struggling because her dad travels all the time for work. So he's barely here. And I'm like, okay, how can I show up for her in a way that's meaningful for a 5-year-old? But translate that to an older kid or even an adult child. And how can I show up in a way that's meaningful to her, not you?
Yeah.
Because again, guys in the fixer mode are always like, oh, well, I just fixed your problem. That's awesome. That's not how I needed you to show up, though.
Yeah.
Because again, women receive love as loving affection, loving attention. And if you're just coming to fix my problem, I don't necessarily feel loved. I feel like, oh, well, you did that because you think I can't do it.
Yeah.
So it just translates different. But yeah, definitely if I were a guy, I would be like, how can I show up for her in a way that's meaningful, that's going to be meaningful to her? And if you don't know, ask.
Yeah,
there you go.
I was just about to say that. You took the words out of my mouth.
And we're scared to death to ask that question.
Oh, gosh, that is a scary proposition.
Right.
Right.
Once she tells you,
such a good one.
then you have to do it.
It is a good one. No, it is a good one. It is.
And guess what? She's going to feel safe.
Yeah.
Because that's practicing safety. She's like, wait, my dad cares. My dad wants to know how he can help me.
Yeah. Even if she says, I don't need anything. I don't need anything right now. That's okay. Right.
Yeah.
That's okay. It was the fact that we asked.
Right.
Correct.
You made yourself available.
It shows that you care.
Yep.
Yeah. It shows that you're loving. You're available for the process, whatever the process is.
Yeah.
Like I grew up, but my parents weren't very, I guess, just emotionally in tune, right? They kind of had like their own drama going on. They weren't really sure how to be emotionally available for us as kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was 16, I had this huge, I want to call it a daddy crisis. Okay. Let's call it a daddy crisis, where I was kind of like, my parents got divorced when I was 2. So this is, it took a long while to get here, but 16 is when it kind of hit. It kind of hit its head for me. And I was like really, really upset. And I had a lot of trust issues and just like overwhelming like trust issues with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so my response to that was to call my dad over, who I didn't live with, barely saw, and tell him about himself. That's what I did at 16. I told my dad about himself. And when I say that, I mean, I just said really nasty, mean things. Like I was not nice at all. It was very hurtful. And my dad left crying. And then he didn't talk to me for 6 months.
Mm.
And so that experience, although I was equally wrong, right? But him just not being available to hear how you hurt me was a problem.
Yeah.
And is a problem.
Yep.
And that created that lack of safety for me. That I'm like, okay, well, if I'm upset at you, I can never tell you because you're not going to do anything about it. You're just going to reject me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I can go all day on the daddy issues, like for real.
I get it. I get
and
it.
teach you how to be a better dad, because it's just something that I've seen, I've experienced. I've gone through a lot of counseling, coaching, and then even doing, having a psychology degree and learning about this in school and really learning myself better. And again, in the acceptance lies the peace. Like I can't keep going back. If you have a grown daughter already, and if you're a woman listening to this and you have daddy issues, you can't keep going back to the child that you were. Nothing about that is ever going to change. You need to accept it, make peace with it, and move on.
Yeah.
Let the daddy issues die, because you're just literally just dragging it out forever.
Sure.
And I got to a place where I was like, you know what? Just like I do the best that I can, my parents did the best that they can. And you just have to have grace. Have grace for people. Because the reality is that you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah,
you're only doing the best that you can.
There you go. That's an awesome story. Acceptance equals peace. I've got some notes from this conversation that are just going to help my day in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Veronica, I've got one more question, and then we'll wrap it up and let you get on with your day, and we'll see what's happening this Saturday. When you and I spoke the other evening, you said a couple of things that really resonated with me, but the one that sticks out is we were talking about, you mentioned vulnerability and availability. Those were key words. I even shared those with Sarge as some pivotal words that we were going to talk about today, and we did. You also were talking, you said, and I'm going to paraphrase, you said people need someone to stand by their side and help hold their arms up. I'm a very visual guy. I'm thinking of Moses, right? In Leviticus, I think it is, where he's standing there and the Israelites are winning the battle until his arms get tired, right? He's standing there with his arms up to heaven saying, Lord, we want to win. And then his arms get tired, and his brother Aaron, another guy whose name I never remember, come up and hold his arms up, and they start winning again until they lower his arms and they start losing. And so that's what I saw when you said that, but I'd really love for you to unpack that for our listeners a little bit, and why you think it may sound obvious why you need someone by your side, but I'd really like to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah. So for me, I'm going to give you a personal example because this is the best way for me to explain it. When I already was divorced, I got a divorce, and it was kind of like my first real year of being a single mom. And with a very young daughter, and just the emotional overload of motherhood is enough to bury anybody, I swear. But tack on financial stress, and working a lot, having to organize my life, having to make sure my kid was, taken care of in all the ways. It was emotionally and mentally beyond draining and exhausting in ways that
Sure.
I honestly would have never made it out of it if I did not have a relationship with the Lord. I mean, the amount of times that I was like, God, I cannot do one more minute. Like one more minute. I don't have another minute in me. And I remember in that moment, God highlighting to me the importance of community. Like, honestly, he's like, community, Veronica, like, get a community, get some people to walk beside you in life that you can talk to, that you can be vulnerable with.
That you trust.
And that you trust. And most importantly, somebody who has been there and has the results. Because, I mean, I can talk to married women all day about motherhood, but guess what? You're not in my shoes. You have help.
Exactly.
And so people that are in the same or similar relationships or have been in the similar situation can help you the most because they've been there, right? And so I remember not wanting to be vulnerable, not wanting to do whatever it took. And then I was like, you know what? The community that you don't have, if you don't have the community that you want, that's your invitation to build it.
Amen.
There you go.
And so I was like, okay, ridiculous name. Okay. But I started a first-time mom community called Babies Are the New Black. Remember that show Orange is the New Black?
Yes, totally.
Yeah. So I started this thing, Babies Are the New Black. I even got a t-shirt. I'm such a dork. Anyways, I got a t-shirt. And I
imagine those were flying off the shelves, just flying.
Yeah. No, the merch didn't do good. It's okay. But I started this community, and I just started by reaching out to women that I knew were first-time moms. So first time you're in the situation, single or, married or whatever. And I was just like, hey, I just want to start up this community of first time moms so we can go out together and have coffee. We can bring our kids and we can just, be together and talk because, motherhood is very isolating, especially in the early years, And so I invited one person, that person invited another mom. And by the end of it, we had 30 people.
Wow.
And we would go and get together every other Saturday, and we would just go to different coffee shops. Again, my love for coffee shops. And we would talk. But here's the gift of that, because if I didn't do that, I would have never met one of my closest and dearest friends that I have right now to this day, who walked through single motherhood years ago, remarried, has a beautiful marriage, completely restored life. And this woman, when I say, I'm gonna get emotional, but when I say that she has held my arms up, I mean it.
Sure.
I can call her and, at any given moment, time, whatever, and she listens to me. She has come over. She has helped me be a mom. She has made me a better mom. And she was emotionally available for me and also taught me so much. And
we understand.
She really held my arms up when I couldn't do it anymore, when I didn't know how to navigate, co-parenting and dealing with another person. You need to find people like that. And it's really hard. And it's hard because if you're not willing to be vulnerable, you're not going to get there. If you are not willing to take the first step, you don't get there.
We agree.
And I feel it's an invitation, and it's the same thing with our relationship with God. God is already there. He's already shown up. It's your turn. You have to take the step now, step forward. And community with other females that you're in similar situations. If you're married, get into community with other married couples, because the reality is that you're going to struggle at some point. If you're not struggling now, you're going to struggle in 5 years.
Yeah.
Something's going to happen, and you're going to want those people that are going to hold you up, that are going to hold your marriage up, that are going to pray for you, they're going to pray for your marriage. And this was one of the biggest things that I didn't have when I was married the first time. We didn't have a community because everything was fake. Everything was very superficial. I was available for the realness, but he was very facade, everything was everything's perfect, great life or whatever, never vulnerable with people, never told anybody what he struggled with. And it destroyed our marriage, like his lack of vulnerability. He ended up having an affair when I was 2 months pregnant and we were married for 4 months. And that's why I'm saying, like, this community piece and having those people in your life is pivotal to your success in your relationships and as a person.
We agree completely. We are huge proponents of the arms up theory. It is the foundation. Authentic community is all we talk about. It is everything on our website. It's what we believe in the Foxhole, right, Sarge?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's critical, and being in community, and then again dipping your toe in the water of vulnerability and transparency and availability, and taking those incremental steps, just 1 inch deeper, 1 inch deeper, 1 inch deeper. If you're not a high dive guy like me, well then hey, just slip in off the edge of the pool or whatever it is you got to do to get in, dangle the feet in. But
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this was a great conversation. An hour flies by. And so, Veronica, just want to thank you. I mean, thank you for taking the time and just investing in us and in our listeners, and investing in people in general, just committing your life to that. And, really, really appreciate you being on.
Really.
Thank you. I love being on with you guys. You guys are great. And I'm honestly, when I heard about your podcast, I was so happy and proud, because I really just think it's so necessary for guys to know that this exists, that it's possible to have authentic relationships and community, and that it's necessary.
Yeah.
Like, get the stigma out of there, like, this is what you actually need to be a successful man. It's not the job, it's not the career, it's the community, because the community makes the person.
Yes.
Boy, do we agree. I want to just say this in closing. Our episode number 21 was entitled A Bias for Action. And I could just hear you in those last 5 minutes.
Yes.
That little energy in your voice. You have it too, don't you? You have a bias towards action.
Clearly she does.
Yep.
Clearly.
We're movers.
Want to encourage our listeners to just learn more about Veronica. You can go to her website, MissVeronicaColon.com. Check out her book, Half-Baked Love. You can connect with her via social media through that website as well. And thank you again, Veronica, and thanks to our listeners. We appreciate your support as always. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Share it with somebody who you think might be blessed, and we will talk again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
God bless.
Well, if any of us were unsure about finding hope and healing and freedom from the darkness that this world brings into our lives, Miss Veronica brought some clarity and wisdom to the Foxhole today on just how to make that happen. I'm so excited for Veronica and the things that God is doing in her and through her. While her focus is on helping other women, Veronica brought some very insightful perspectives to us men in the Foxhole. She reminded us that relationships between husbands and wives, fathers and daughters, any relationships that seek closeness and love for each other, it all starts with being a safe place for each other to be vulnerable. I know, easier said than done. In fact, I just heard the collective sigh of all the men in the room as they mourn the loss of my man card for even saying that. But that vulnerability makes for very fertile ground, where God can show up, where people can do the work, and where lives can be lived abundantly as God intended for us to live them. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank Veronica for coming into the Foxhole today. Not meek and mild, but with a roar, just like I knew she would. Thank you for being courageous, Veronica, in your walk and in your mission to help others find God's healing. Lord, please continue to use this podcast to impact the lives of all who listen. I ask that you would bring hope and healing to each and every one of them. Meet them right where they are, Lord, and reveal yourself to them like only you can do. In Jesus' name, amen.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it and invite others to the Foxhole. You can find us wherever you download your favorite podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you know when new episodes drop, and please rate us and comment there too, as it'll help us get found by others who could benefit. Find, follow, and like us on your go-to social media networks by searching Foxhole Symphony, or visit foxholesymphony.com to make it super easy to find us. Drop us a line with feedback, questions, topic requests, who knows? Maybe you'll be a guest on a future episode. In the meantime, prepare to move, embrace discomfort, and just be you.